I'm Ronald Rovers. I'm a researcher, have been so in several universities, and I run my own office in research for a zero impact built environment as a main theme in everything I do. And zero impact built environment is energy, materials, food, water, etc. So what's circularity or circular building or whatever? The key here is the word circular. That everything is used in a circular way and not in a one-directional way with linear delaying of the use, like recycling or reuse. But circular means that we also restore the original stock. If we don't do that, we run out of stock and stops the process at some point. And it's important to realize that this does not only count for so-called bio-based materials or organic materials, a wood forest that regrows after cutting the wood, but that it also works for non-organic materials, minerals and metals. If we don't close the circle, we are linearity using the resources, and we will run out of stock. And this is one of my main themes of research, to show that both are part of a circular process in the Earth system. Only the one is on a short rotation cycle and the other is on a million years rotation cycle. But in principle, we can treat them both in the same circular process and should take care that we also bring them back into a circular process. Then what is circular design? Well, that should be a design that is based on materials that are regenerated during the lifetime. Now, that for non-organic materials, that's very difficult because the impact of the materials is huge and the circular energy needed to regenerate them is huge, which requires a lot of land to compensate. So a circular design would be a house which requires the least amount of land to generate the energy or regenerate the resources used for this house. And then calculations show that we come to a bio-based house, a house completely or nearly completely made of bio-based materials. Yeah, I'm often asked, but we still have a lot of metals in the Earth's crust, so why do we worry about that? The point is that it's always a matter of concentration of materials. So if you have a huge concentrated material, it's easy to mine it and to use it. And it will cost little energy to do that. You can pick it up. But what we see is that the ores of several metals are declining. The saturation of the ores is declining very fast. So they require ever more energy to gain the same amount of materials. And for copper, for instance, ores are contain 0.5% of copper, while it was sometimes 20%. And so it's not linear. It requires exponentially more energy to acquire 1 kilogram of copper. So we can say there's still enough copper. Yes, there's enough copper, there's enough iron in the Earth's crust, but it will cost ever more energy to regain them. For food, we all know that we have to reduce our meat consumption, which is similar in materials. We have to reduce our metals consumption. So the metals are the red meat of building materials, so to say. So we have to become vegetarian in food, but we also have to become vegetarian in materials. In addressing climate change and making zero energy houses retrofits, time is an essential element, which is always, everything is time related. Land use is also time related. So time related is very important in retrofitting houses, because suppose that we retrofit 100,000 houses a year and we'll have to do 7 million houses. We'll be busy with 70 years of work. So by 2090 we might have addressed all the houses. While in the meantime, while we're not having retrofitted 100% of houses, the not retrofitted houses still emit CO2. And that builds up to a huge accumulated CO2 emissions before you have actually results, serious results. The curve goes only very slightly down. So way past 2050 you will see real results. So it's much better to take a few measures and apply them to the whole stock in a few years than to take all the best measures together and apply them to little parts of the stock over a long time. So for instance, it's much better to clad all our roofs, to retrofit all our roofs with solar panels in 3, 4, 5 years. We can do that, I mean, if we want, because then we have an immediate reduction demand of nearly 50% of fossil energy coming through the grid to the houses because they produce themselves. Another interesting measure is, which is a lot discussed, should we apply heat pumps? Well, if we discuss this for 5 years, I mean, the accumulated CO2 emissions we will never gain back again. It's better now to start today, immediately, to retrofit all houses with a heat pump installation and do this in 3, 5, 7 years. Because that will reduce the energy demand for heating significantly. Figures relate between 30 and 70%. So that will also reduce fossil fuel demand, because we already have the solar cells as well to generate electricity. Of course, the coldest part of the winter we will not cover with an uninsulated house and a heat pump, but the demand has decreased already immediately a lot, which for the next 50 years will imply that we have a very low accumulated CO2 emissions of the remaining demand, and have the time then to make the big step to zero energy houses over time, which is far more effective than that we now do little parts of the stock with zero energy retrofits. Okay, then what's circular economy? Which is 2 words. Circular, I can explain with resources, but what's economy? And in economy and circular economy is usually meant as financial economy, because we can have economy of resources as well. But here is meant financial economy. Well, financial economy is an artificial system that we use to evaluate and to treat resources. But it's not funded on anything. I mean, it's just an invention based on nothing. I mean, we print paper and we print money. And if you borrow money of the bank, it's created instantly, the money. It's not there. It's and what you can do with money is create depth in resources, because you buy resources to build a house, which creates a depth in resources, which you exhaust. The stock of resources is exhausted, with money created out of nothing. So if everyone does this, I mean, we run out of resources without creating any real value. So to evaluate circular resource use with economy is using 2 contradictory systems, which never can work. Because if you can earn money with exhausting resources, I mean, you can see that we will end up without resources and a lot of money, but that's not where we are heading for. So in my view, circular economy does not exist, unless we change the financial economy system to be based on real physical value of resources, of land in my case, as I argue, but otherwise it's just a fake system to use and to evaluate things.